In this lecture, we're going to learn how to multiply and divide signed numbers, and we'll talk about division by zero. Let's first look at multiplication. We're just going to learn two rules for multiplication. When we multiply signed numbers, we can do one of two things. We can multiply two numbers having the same sign, or we can multiply two numbers having different signs. So we're going to get two separate rules. The first rule is the product of two numbers having the same sign is positive. So multiplying two positive numbers is positive. Multiplying two negative numbers is positive. The second rule that we have to remember is the product of two numbers having different signs is negative. Okay, so again, when we multiply two numbers having the same sign, the result is going to be positive. Multiplying two numbers that have different signs, the result is going to be negative. And let's do some examples. Example, -5 times -2. Well, the rule says that if we multiply numbers having the same sign, the resulting number is going to be positive. So -5 times -2 is going to be a positive 10. Example, -7 times a positive 3. Well, our second rule said that the product of two numbers having different signs is negative. So here I have a negative times a positive. My result is going to be negative. Okay. Let's do one more. How about 25/4 times, how about a -2/5? Okay. Well, let's remember way back when we multiply fractions, we can certainly multiply straight across. I can multiply the numerator straight across, multiply the denominator straight across, then I can reduce. But if we remember, there's always an easier way to do things if we can find the right way. Remember, we can cross-cancel diagonally. Now let's see, 5 and 25, they're related. 5 can go into both. So 5 can go into 5 one time. 5 can go into 25 5 times. Now let's see if we can cancel this way. A 2 can go into 2 once, and a 2 can go into 4 twice. So let me rewrite what I have. I've reduced this problem to 5/2 times a -1 over 1. And now I can multiply straight across. Now let's look first of all, what's our sign going to be? Well, I'm multiplying a positive number times a negative number, so the product of numbers with different signs is going to be negative. 5 times 1 is 5. 2 times 1 is 2. Okay. That's multiplication. Let's try some division problems. Okay. The nice thing about division, it has the exact same properties as multiplication. So I'll go ahead and write out the two rules for division. Instead of product, when we talk about division, we're going to talk about the quotient. So 1, the quotient of two numbers having the same sign, whether it be two negatives or two positives, is going to be positive. And just like multiplication, the quotient of two numbers having the different signs is going to be negative. Okay. So let's do a couple examples. Let's do a couple examples of division. Now, there's a couple different ways we can write division. How about negative 16 over 4? Now that's the same thing as negative 16 divided by 4. So we can really think of this in two different ways, kind of as a fraction or in the traditional division symbol that you used way back when. Okay, so 16 divided by 4 was 4. Well, what's the sign going to be? Since we're taking a negative divided by a positive, they're different, so the resulting answer is going to be negative. Okay. How about negative 2/3 divided by a 1/3? Okay. Fractions. Well, let's don't let fractions get us down. Let's just write a quick rule for fractions. Okay? Let's get some terminology first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1/3 into negative 2/3. Now the number down here is going to be called the divisor. Okay? The number up here is going to be known as the dividend. Okay. So our rule here is to invert the divisor and multiply. Now what do I mean by invert? You may have heard the word reciprocal. Okay? What invert means is I'm going to flip. The 1/3 is going to become a 3. Now let's follow this rule. Invert the divisor and multiply. So I'm going to take negative 2/3 and now I'm going to change it into a multiplication problem and I'm going to invert the divisor. Okay? So negative 2/3 divided by 1/3 becomes negative 2/3 times 3 over 1. Okay? And now we can multiply straight across, or I can try to find some cancellation. In this case, the 3's cancel each other. And now I multiply straight across. And since I have a negative times a positive, my result is going to be negative. And I could just write that as negative 2. Okay? Let's do a couple more. How about negative, I like thirds, divided by negative 6/5. Okay? Now let's remember our rule. I'm going to invert the divisor and multiply. So I'm going to change this to a multiplication problem. I'll just use a dot to represent multiplication. And I'm going to invert the divisor. Maybe I'll keep that in parentheses. Now we just multiply straight across. Since I have a negative times a negative, my resulting number is going to be positive. And 1 times 5 is 5. 3 times 6 is 18. Okay. So there's really nothing to it. Let's look at this example. How about negative 10 divided by 0? Now, what is negative 10 divided by 0? That's a good question. In mathematics, one no-no in mathematics is division by 0. We cannot divide by 0 in mathematics. So we have to have some way to represent this problem. And what we're going to say is anytime we divide by 0, the answer is going to be undefined. Okay? So 5 over 0 is undefined. 17/3 divided by 0 is undefined, etc. Whenever you see division by 0, you automatically want to think, oh, that's a no-no in mathematics, and we're always going to say that it is undefined. All right? So let's summarize real quick. First of all, multiplication. The product of two numbers with the same sign is positive. In other words, a positive times a positive is positive, or a negative times a negative is positive. Okay? This should be, let's see, the product of two numbers with different signs. So either a positive times a negative is going to be negative. Okay? Division, same thing. Whether you have a positive over a positive, that's going to result in a positive number, or a negative over a negative, that will also be positive. Okay? The quotient of two numbers with the different signs is negative. So a positive over a negative when we divide is negative. Similar, negative over a positive is also negative. Remember this rule. When we divide fractions, we invert the divisor, fraction, and multiply. Okay, so we just want to change the divide problem into a multiply problem. And last, don't forget, division by 0 is undefined.